and
Great. Thanks, Leonie. I'll start. So welcome everyone to today's ALCN Learning Forum, where we're going to hear about Circular Head Study Centre. Just going to change my slide. Would like to start with an acknowledgement of country and acknowledge the traditional owners on the land from which we all come today, and where learning takes place across Australia and globally. So I acknowledge the richness that our Aboriginal community members bring to our lands across Australia and their learning that has been passed across generations for thousands of years. So I invite everybody to use the chat and put in the lands on which you are all joining today from, and also use the chat for any questions and comments as we progress through. So today's session is an informal learning webinar with time after Tony's presentation for questions and discussions. So you'll note that we are recording today's sessions for our colleagues that are unable to attend. And I kindly ask if you can keep yourselves on mute until we open up the forum for discussions. I would like to now hand over to Leonie, who's going to introduce our guest presenter today.
I'll just put people on mute. So yeah, we've got everyone, but not Tony. Okay. Welcome everybody, and it's great to have you all here. And we're going to have plenty of time for discussion today. So I just want to get off to a quick start because this is a learning session, and I want you to think during this, during the time that Tony talks, about questions that you can ask him. I've got a few questions already. But Tony McGilvery is the manager of the Study Centre in Circular Head. And he was telling me before that he is a lifelong learner, and you know he had that jagged edge pathway from school, didn't know what he was doing, and I think from year 10 went into the Navy, and that opened up doors for him, and he then went on to do an IT background and then a cybersecurity background, and he called himself a lane changer. He started out as a communications technician before going into IT, and he started on a certificate 3 in IT, and then a certificate 4, and then a diploma, and then a master's. And you can tell he's passionate about lifelong learning and letting other people have the opportunity. And he was really surprised when he got the job as manager of Study Centre in Circular Head, which he'll tell you is a rural community in Tasmania. And I'm not surprised at all, because I think that people with that kind of background know about getting into lifelong learning and know how it can change your life. And I think Tony is a great example of that. And we look forward to hearing from you, Tony. So I'll put myself on mute now and let you have a go.
Well, thanks very much for that introduction, Leonie. I'll apologise in advance. As Leonie said, I'm from an IT background and I'm used to being on the back end of things, so I'm not used to talking into cameras, and I know there's experts out there on Canva, but I have boring PowerPoint slides, so sorry about the death by PowerPoint. So Circular Head, which is a UNESCO Global Network Learning City, is a very small one, is in the far northwest coast of Tasmania. It's named Circular Head after a geological feature in Stanley, which is known locally as the Nut. A lot of people may have heard of that in tourist stuff. The population is 8,300 and an area of 4,900 square kilometres. And under the Accessibility and Remoteness Index, we're rated as outer regional, and the socio-economic index is 1, which is the most disadvantaged. The main industries in Circular Head are dairy and beef, with dairy making up about 40% of Tasmanian production. And there's a large contingent of migrant workers, particularly in dairy, and workers in the beef industry, particularly the abattoir under the PALMS scheme. There's commercial fishing and aquaculture. We do finfish and southern rock lobster, abalones and oysters. There's no salmon farms in the northwest coast yet. They're down on the west coast, but they do relocate their seals from near the salmon farms up to here, which is an issue with the local commercial fishermen. There's iron ore processing. The iron ore's mined at Savage River and they pump it up as a slurry in a pipeline to Port Ladder, where they turn it into pellets and ship it primarily to China. It's a high-grade hematite that's used for particularly for surgical stainless steel instruments. And we have a lot of tourism. We've got the Tarkine region, which is known as the edge of the world. If you stand on the west coast, on the corner there and look west, the sea goes all the way around. The next land stop is South America. And so that's one of the cleanest air points in the world, and they've got a clean air monitoring station there at Cape Grim. And on the nut also in Stanley is a keen draw card. Agricultural, it's primarily potatoes. We've got McCain's in town, but they only do chips. If you've been to a McDonald's or something like that recently, there's a good chance you've eaten chips from Circular Head. Other vegetables are not so much grown anymore. They're done by Simplot, which is in Devonport. That's further up the coast. The next slide, please, Sharon. So the formal educational infrastructures or learning infrastructures within Circular Head, we've got 5 primary schools. There's Smithton, which is the main town, then outlying towns at Forest, Stanley, Edith Creek and Redfern. In Smithton, there's one independent school, which is a Catholic school. They don't have a high school, so their students that go on to do high school catch a bus up the coast to Burnie, which is about 80 kilometres from here. There's one public Smithton High School. They have limited subjects for year 11 and 12, so there's about 2 bus loads of students that go up to Hellier College, which is a public college again in Burnie. There's one K-12 independent school, which is a Christian school. We've got no higher education or vet campuses here. There are 2 trade training centres that do vet in schools. There's one at the Christian school and one at Smithton High. The one at Smithton High was formerly the TAFE, but they've closed down. Both those trade colleges do school-based apprenticeships up to Certificate 2 level. There is some TAFE training undertaken at the Smithton High Trade Training Centre, but there's issues around working with vulnerable people. They don't particularly like doing training there. It's a bit of an issue because they have to escort people to the toilet, all that sort of stuff. And there's one regional university study hub, which is where I am, known as the Study Centre. We're not an RTO. We're on the site of a former agricultural college, which was known as a bit of a white elephant. They had federal funding to build it. AgriTas, the organisation that built it, went into partnership with Wodonga TAFE, and they didn't get the student numbers to say that Wodonga would send down to meet their minimum number requirements, so they wouldn't send a trainer, and it all fell through. So we ended up renting the building. Non-formal learning centres, we've got, of course, heritage museums, a heap of sporting clubs. AFL and hockey are big sports here. We've got the mandatory men's shed, and we've got Circular Head Aboriginal Corporation. And there's rural health. They run a program called Chill Out, which is primarily for elderly people. They learn about anything and everything. We've got Libraries Tasmania. I know on the mainland, libraries are usually run by councils, but in Tasmania, it's a state government body. Of course, we've got Circular Head Council, and there's another organisation called 2610, which is about adult literacy and numeracy. The name self-evident, the 26 and the 10 letters and 10 numbers. Libraries Tasmania and Circular Head Council are both organisations that are part of that network. Next slide, please, Sharon. So literacy plan, we're just, the current plan's getting a bit long in the tooth. So we've got a draft literacy plan reviews happening at the moment. In fact, I just come out of a meeting where we were looking at that. The council have engaged an external consultant to assist all the local stakeholders with that, which the consultant was Amanda Wilson, who's a Churchill Trust Fellow, so we were lucky to have her. So as I said, we presented the draft copy to the Education and Training Committee. They sort of like it, so it's out for public feedback. There's a few changes to the old plan. It's more sort of open for everybody and more about celebrating learning. Although the plans for everyone, there's a lot of 2610 funding behind it, so that it's sort of biased more towards adults with a big focus on literacy and numeracy. I'm happy to report that they've also referenced Wyndham Learning City as a possible advisor and information provider. And hot off the press, I can say that I was able to convince the council that it's a good idea that they should join the ALCN. So it looks like the 2610 side of Circular Head Council will be doing that. The new plan also has a few, like it's got, the vision statement is a lot broader, and the goals have been reduced down from 5 to 4, and they're more encompassing, and they've got the supporting strategies, actions, and who's involved and what measures there are. The previous one, I made the mistake of going to one of the council education meetings and asking about measures because my technical background, I wanted to see actual measures. But I just received blank faces, but in the draft one, they've been named out. And actually in the meeting, we discussed, like, okay, we're collecting these measures, but what does success actually look like? And that was sort of a bit unclear. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and thresh out what, some sort of measurement of success does actually look at. The workforce planning study, that's also, again, an output of the Education and Training Committee. There's lots of stakeholders in that. It's mainly education and local industry. That it's sort of a bit difficult because there's not so much a shortage of people to do jobs. It's a shortage of people are underemployed. So lots of work is seasonal and short-term jobs. I'm sure that's relevant to most rural places. And we have a jobs hub which is co-located in here with us. It's called Northwest Working. Although they're geared primarily for proactive job seekers. That is not so much people that have Centrelink entitlements, but for example, mothers that might want to return to the workforce, or one example we had was a share farmer. They were sick of share farming, so they had no qualifications. So they come in and spoke to Northwest Working, and they got referred to us, and they did a Certificate 3 in business. They did it in about 6 weeks through a private RTA, and happy to report that they received a job out of that. There are other mechanisms in town for Jobs Hub, such as Azuria, which do cater for those that have Centrelink entitlements and is government funded. Next slide, please, Sharon. So the Study Centre Circular Head, that's federally funded through the Rush program by the Commonwealth Department of Education. We were refunded for another 4 years in May 22. We have a partnership with UTAS and memorandum of understanding memorandums of understanding with TASTAFE and Northwest Working. The Northwest Working is a pretty handy organisation to have in this space because we do lots of cross referrals. So they might have inquiries about people that want to get employment and they need to get educated. So they refer them to us, and we get people that come in and they're getting educated and they want to get employed. So we refer them back to Northwest Working. So that works well. So the study centre, what do we offer? We offer private study spaces, breakout areas, computing and printing resources. We also temporarily lend out laptops to disadvantaged people. There are other organisations in town that they can buy laptops through various grants and things like that we refer them to. We do academic and student support services. That includes stuff like referencing, research skills, how to navigate learning management systems, offer encouragement, which sometimes they need a lot of. However, we're not a counselling service. People might come in for a chat, but if there needs to do any counselling, we refer them on. We've got contacts that we can refer them to. The federal funding that was available through grant applications. The grant apps were only accepted from not-for-profit organisations. So our auspice organisation is West Coast Heritage, which is based in Zeehan on the West Coast. So the study centre actually started from Study Hub West Coast, which is based down in Zeehan. They had an underspend, so they approached Chedic and using the hub and spoke model and made a proposal that they set up a spoke here, which became the study centre, and that was embraced because, as I previously mentioned, the old ag college was a bit of a white elephant, so they saw that as an opportunity to fill that space, and wasn't quite what they had in mind with their original ag college, but it was still a learning space, so that was good. I'll have the next slide, please, Sharon. So after all that is the study centre a model for success for regional, rural and remote learning? Well, I think the answer to that is, where does it fit into lifelong learning? So it augments other learning infrastructures, so the formal and informal, because we're doing formal vet and tertiary training for remote students, and we're also doing informal training. We work as a venue for private RTAs to come in and offer industry-based courses such as working at heights and confined spaces, all those other high-risk type training. We also provide wraparound services for a broad range of lifelong learning. So 35% of our students are 18 to 25 and 65% are over 25. And our oldest registered student is 78, who registered recently, is doing a diploma of languages with UTAS, which I think is very interesting. This goes to show that you never stop learning things. And I think the measure of success is evidenced by our results, and that's been confirmed by the Department of Education expanding the model. So, as I said, Circular Head and West Coast were a hub spoke model. So we expanded on that. We were in cohort 1 funding, and they expanded again in cohort 4. So the model's so successful that they've approved another cohort 5 hub on Eastern Tasmania in St Helens. So that's opening mid-25. And the Rush network is so successful that they're actually doing a suburban university study hub. I think there's a couple in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. And one of those has also been approved for opening again in mid-2025 in Thrill, which is down near Hobart. So that's pretty much what I had to say about it. Has anyone got any questions?
Thank you very much, Tony. I'll take the floor for questions. And just to start things off, I think that what you've given us is an idea of what the importance of a study hub within a regional location. And we know that you have a thinner population and it's not easy for people to access. And I was just wondering, the literature on study hubs in regional location often talks about barriers to learning, and I was wondering if you could outline, some of the barriers are like childcare, transportation costs, and how do you overcome those barriers for your learners? And are there some learners that still may not be able to access learning in your area?
One of the barriers is literacy and numeracy. I'm sure people are aware just from general media, I guess, particularly around when they're doing, the name escapes me, for the literacy and numeracy tests in schools, but Tasmania's got the lowest in Australia. And I've had examples, people coming in to do our courses that we offer, like industry-based courses, and we've had to scribe because they literally cannot read or write. So that one way of overcoming a barrier to them gaining a qualification. For example, one of them was a coxswain's ticket because they were working in the local aquaculture industry and they needed to drive a commercial boat. You've got to have a coxswain's ticket, which is a written test. So I sat down as a scribe and, they were fine doing all the prac and just scribed for them. So that overcomes that barrier. But there's also, I mentioned, a 2610 program. That's, opportunities to improve people's literacy and numeracy. Transport is a big issue. There's people in secondary school that they live in the outer towns like Marrawar, and they can't get from Marrawar to Smithton to catch the bus to go up to Burnie to attend the year 11 and 12 college. And there's no accommodation available left at the college. So basically they come back to Smithton High, which has limited, because Smithton High does go up to year 12, but it has very limited subject choice. So those barriers are sort of difficult to overcome at that stage. But when they leave there and they're looking at doing further education, then they can utilise the study centre because we offer those services that they have. People that don't come in, like we have students, we offer like an outreach program. So they can just email us or something and say, can you print these resources for me? So we'll print them and then drive them out to the farm or wherever they may be. So there's that. And pretty much just try and offer as many modes and locations, whatever we can, to help out. There's plenty of barriers that you mentioned some before, childcare, particularly the farms. Everyone sits around trying to work out how they can overcome, because everyone knows that childcare is an issue, but particularly on dairy farms, hours don't suit driving into Smithton to go to the childcare centre. But then say you need, out near the farms, you need a location that's going to be, like a family-based or community-based childcare or something, but it's a case of who's going to supply the building, who's funding it, and then these questions don't seem to get answered. So there are some barriers that are, you can sometimes go over, around or through barriers, but some barriers are seemingly impermeable. So we just keep seeing what we can do.
Seems like a project for a researcher to think about barriers and how to overcome them.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of questions actually. The first one comes from Diane Hillier, and then Matthew has got a question as well. But we'll have Diane's first. Diane, could you ask your question, please?
Thanks, Tony. It's yeah, interesting to hear what's happening there in Circular Head. You talked about low literacy levels. Do you know what reason is attributed to those? Like, I mean, is it a lot to do with the remoteness, or is it anyway? What have you learned?
Honestly, don't know, and everyone asks the same questions. Is it under resourcing at schools? Is it they sit at the back of the class and say nothing, so they go and slip under the radar? Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe they're in the wrong sort of school. I don't know. School doesn't suit some people. Yeah, it's plenty of people asking that questions. I don't know what the real answer is. It is very sad though. Like it's holding people back so much.
Yeah, that is hard.
But all we can do is offer these programs that there is help available, and if they've slipped through the school system, we just need some sort of something to catch them, safety net, and these resources available. That's the hard part, is convincing people, because they're embarrassed or whatever about not being able to read, and they're
getting over
very
that
well
stigma.
at covering it up. So you just got to get rid of that stigma and say it's okay, and there's people that can help.
Thank you.
I think that's a good reason to have the study hubs there, that you do provide a service that it seems so important. And you did say something about schooling before, I think, about so that could be a part of it. Perhaps people not being as interested in school as another reason. Anyway, we'll go on to Matthew. You've got your hand raised. Matthew, where are you from?
Hi, Hi, Leonie. I am from Hume City Council,
lovely
located
to
northern
see you.
suburbs of Melbourne. We're actually going to be one of the next recipients of a suburban study hub. So we're going through the process at the moment with La Trobe Uni to convert some of the office space within the council administration building in Broadmeadows into the study hub. So yeah, it's definitely an initiative and a facility that we're really looking forward to welcoming into the area and being part of the learning and development ecosystem there. Tony, I'm interested. So from Hume's perspective, we're going to be we've got a number of partnerships in place through our multiversity program, but we're also going to be the landlord for the study hub, being auspiced by La Trobe. So I'm interested in what your experiences have been in terms of, I'm curious in terms of where is the study hub located, in terms of like what building, like in terms of where is it accommodated. And then I'd be really interested in what the experience has been around utilisation and uptake in terms of numbers of students. And I take your point, it's a very different area in terms of the demographics and the population you've described. So maybe just in terms of, rather than raw numbers, maybe just like trajectories or trends, perhaps, in terms of utilisation and uptake. They're probably the two things. And in terms of talking about the building, have there been any advantages to being where it is in terms of any flow-on effects or kind of nice complementary kind of benefits that have arisen from having it located where it is?
So the building location, we're not in the CBD of Smithton. We're sort of more towards the outer edge of town. We are in the old Agritas Agricultural College, which, as I said, became a bit of a white elephant. So for a long time, that was baggage because we kept being associated with the agricultural college.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taken a long time to get over that, and we're even now after 5 years or whatever. I've only been here 12 months, but for the 5 years that it's been the study centre, it's still referred to as Agritas. There's that. Our sister study hub down in ALCN, they utilise the old Scout Hall, and they pay $1 a year to the local council to use it, but we're paying full commercial rates to our landlord, which is still Agritas. Part of the grant, deed of grant, is you've got to try and become sustainable. So we seek funding from wherever, other grants or industry, but we also rent out training rooms as venues. As I said, we're not an RTO. We bring in an RTO to offer these courses and make money from hiring the room out. And we have people doing information sessions, and they're trying to get wind farms up, for example. So ACE and the renewables mob will want to come and do a public information night, so we'll rent out a room so they can do that. As far as student numbers, we've got, I think, 102 at the moment registered. Probably, I think there's about 40 of those UTAS students, University of Tasmania. The largest cohort of those are nursing students. Registered numbers and utilisation is very different. Utilisation is much lower. Some people you don't see at all. They're registered, but you don't see them, and you quiz them, and then the comeback is, I just know you're there. So they're using you as like a safety net. Some people you only see if they need to print something. They'll come in, print their resource and leave. But we're happy with that. We're here to help students, and if that's what they need, then that's what they need. Our numbers are growing, as in I looked at graphing, it's growing steadily, the registration numbers. We find that we try and, I'm not sure if it's real, if 102 is realistic, because we've got over that period, I think the archived ones might be 20 something, and we periodic, especially after end of year, we'll send out bulk emails and ask if you're no longer studying, can you return your fob, because access is by fob entry. So you can only, we actually, that's in our to start next week, is to do targeted one person at a time and see if they actually have finished studying and no longer require access, so we can sort of firm up the numbers in our database. But yeah, I think the big picture is that as long as you're there to help students and you're meeting the aims, so whether that, as I said, utilisation is you're just a backstop in case the power goes off at home, or they just want to use your printer, or we've got 2 PhD candidates and they use the facilities the most. One's in here nearly every day, one's in at least once a week. So yeah, it's pretty varied, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Was there another part of your question I missed?
No, it was around the building, but also the utilisation. It's something that our council are very interested in. Will be just the how well utilised the facility will be. It's going to be in a very high profile location. It's going to be in the council administration building in Broadmeadows, which is kind of right in the middle of the town centre, opposite the train station. So quite different circumstances there, but and Hume's got very different demographics. We've got a lot of new migrant communities and a lot of disadvantaged and unrepresented students in the tertiary system. So it's going to have a different focus. But yeah, we're working through the licensing and the design and fit out phases at the moment with La Trobe, who are going to be the delivery partner. and working through some fairly curly obligations that the Commonwealth places on the property agreement, which is causing a few headaches at the moment.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, we have, I mentioned, we have a lot of migrant workers, particularly on dairy, and they're mostly from, I think, Pakistan. We had difficulty communicating, and we found out that they're very big on WhatsApp. So we found the key person to speak to, and we found that once we'd found that person, it was easier to disseminate our information through that channel. So you just need to search around and find what works best for your demographic.
Great. Thanks, Tony.
No worries.
Thank you, Matthew, for your question, and we'll follow what happens in Hume with interest. So I think we'll have to get you back later in the year once you've got it up and running to see how you integrate the multiversity unit, which we've had in the past, talks from George about the multiversity model and how you integrate that with the study hut. It'll be interesting to watch that. So thank you very much. Now we've got the next question is from Ursula Murphy, who's a colleague from Hamilton, another rural location, and I used to manage the Hamilton Centre for RMIT, so I know a little bit about it, but it's changed a lot since then, I know. So welcome, Ursula, and what was your question for Tony?
Thanks, Leonie. Well, like Matthew, we're just in the final round being given funding for a regional university study hub. And we are going with a co-location at Southwest TAFE with the TAFE out there, which was RMIT when Leonie was here, and Mary's been here for many years. Tony, my interest is with you were talking about the utilisation, how there's 100 or more enrolled, but the utilisation is low. Your FTE people who are employed through the hub, are they finding that their services are still are in demand? Are they active with the students adequately and being utilised to support the studies?
Yeah, well, there's only I'm one FTE, and we have Patsy, who's our student services officer, so she's here 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So we find that's about the right mix. It's sort of course, it peaks and troughs, but for us at the moment, that's about the right. We're not funded for Patsy's position. Her position is funded through money that we're generating through training. So yeah, we are the next funding application. We'll try and get that position funded. So we wouldn't be doing that if we didn't think it was worthwhile having.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ursula. And now we have a question from Kate White, who is our Kiwi colleague from Ashburton in the South Island, another rural town on the South Island for those who came in a bit later. Kate, over to you.
Thank you. I have more than one question, Tony, but first,
Okay.
did you say the 3-day-a-week person was student support, so like working with the students on academic or pastoral sort of support?
It's a broad term. Does that and admin. We're fortunate that Patsy, she has although we're not counselling, she's very nurturing. So she's like a go-to person when people are, because motivation that can fall away pretty quickly. Even when I was doing my masters, I'd go, Patsy, I'm on my last subject and I've had enough. And yeah.
Thank you. My other questions regarding migrants, has there been any specific training or courses offered to them or with them in mind, or any sort of migrant or newcomers groups working specifically with them through your study centre?
Not in mind, because we treat everyone as an equal, and so we don't sort of target anyone. but we've had a lot come in, like spouses of farm workers, for example, and the care industry is very growing at the moment. Would say aged care and disability care. That's a huge expanding market. So spouses are coming in wanting to do training in those areas. So we've been doing a lot of that. And also, I think the Tasmanian government must have funded the public schools for teachers' aid, because we've had a rush on teacher aid training. So time up to do the Certificate 3 in teaching.
Thank you. It sounds like a very similar area to here, with both the farming and a lot of migrants also working in the aged care industry here in Ashburton.
Yeah.
Are you a UNESCO Learning City?
Circular Head is, yes.
Yeah, Circular Head, sorry.
Yeah.
Am I able to ask a question or two about that?
Yeah, I'm not a part of council, but if I can answer it, I will.
I was just wondering what I guess the benefit had been, or the uptake, the perception in the community, or in your farms and your business owners, in the community in general around that, if it's been an advantage or that
Yeah,
kind of.
I'm not sure whether they know so much about the UNESCO Learning City, like it's advertised that they are one, but they sort of, because they do all the different like the site, what they call the science gig, which happens on Science Week, and like all these learning activities, charts, which is Circular Head Arts Festival, but it's all tied up with learning, and they're looking at expanding, as I've mentioned before. Wyndham was mentioned in dispatches about how they could possibly approach them and get information on taking on the learning festival. So it's expanding. I think because we recently did the report to UNESCO, and before that I had suspicions that it was just a badge, and because the main driver of it was with Libraries Tas, and she'd moved up to Launceston, I suspected it had fallen off, but all the drive and effort and things coming out of the woodwork, and the passion that was displayed by people at council over being, want to maintain and expand this UNESCO Global Learning City, that was pretty promising.
I think the fact that you've got the framework in there, and UNESCO recognised your literacy plan and your workplace plan, because during that global talk in 2022, when we had the director of UNESCO on, and we had one of your colleagues from Circular Head talking, he specifically talked about the study hub model, because this is very applicable for many of the global learning cities in Africa, especially in the rural locations of Africa, where I've read academic articles about how many of the barriers to learning, such as being frightened to go out at night and lack of transport and those kinds of things, if they had a study hub located in their location, it reduces those barriers. So I think that that's a model that for certainly Pascal and all the Pascal International Observatory I'm involved with, and UNESCO are interested in learning more about. So I thought that, so I just wanted to mention that. Now, we've still got some time if anyone else wants to ask a question. The one question many of our members here, Tony, are library members as well, and I was wondering, what is your association, the Study Hubs Association, with the local libraries? Do you have, what kind of relationship do you have there?
We have 2610 is basically libraries that's run out of, they're based at the library, but when they do workshops, we run them here at no charge, because that's, as I said, that's a revenue stream. But for community-based activities like that, we don't charge for. So they come down and use our space to do their like plain English workshops, how to use your phone to, like, as a literacy tool to read and all that sort of stuff. They run all those workshops here. On a personal level, myself and the UTAS person that's here, we're both volunteer literacy tutors, newly appointed. So that's, so we have like that informal involvement with the library as well.
Well, that's great. And I know that often in a rural community, you wear several hats, don't you? So that you might be a manager, but you also have to do this, be engaged in your community and do this volunteer work. And that's for that's part of the job. So you probably know everyone anyway. Anybody else got any questions? Sharon?
Yes, so I just wanted to quickly firstly touch on UNESCO. So you've mentioned Wyndham, Tony, and for those that don't know me, I am from Wyndham City Council. So we're another UNESCO Learning City, and it's very important for us each time we run an event or do collateral for promotions, we include that we are a UNESCO Learning City, so we use the logo on all our branding and all our resources, and that is just to continually let community know that we are a learning city. We're about to undertake a big campaign that we are a learning city, just to continue that messaging. It's hard-earned to get there, and it's something that you really want to continue with that knowledge and awareness momentum. And you touched on the reporting, Tony. So reporting back to UNESCO is quite comprehensive. So you have to prove that you're still maintaining why you're a learning city and what you do to maintain that. So it's hard-earned and well-earned, and it's continuing. Just learning doesn't ever stop, and our messaging is still very important to our community, but also our stakeholders, that we are a UNESCO Global Network Learning City. So my actual question, though, is around, you touched on the measure of success. And I know for us, it's always, there's lots of ways to measure success. And you said about opening up the new study hubs around various areas in Tasmania clearly is an indicator. But it's also great to get sometimes anecdotal measure of success from students and partners and things like that. So I just wondered what else, or what other means and tools you would use for your measuring of success.
We have KPIs built into our reporting back to the Commonwealth, of course. So meeting those, I guess, is a measurement of success. But personally, to me, everyone that graduates, I don't care about KPIs. If they graduate and they've achieved the goal, then to me that's a measurement of success, and I don't care about KPIs really. And I've said that to management, but I'm still here. Meet KPIs, but I think that it's about people at the end of the day.
It is, isn't it? It's those case studies and personal journeys and stories that you gather that is really important.
Yeah. Yes. So 2 points on that. Towards the end of March, Sharon's going to talk about gathering stories. So that's our next learning forum. And Sharon, we've got a question here for you. How often is reporting required for UNESCO? And someone's answered every 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. Thank you. So yes, it is. And I think it was pushed out for 3 years just recently from UNESCO's point of view. But yes, it's every 2 years. It's quite comprehensive. So I'm sure there's someone in UNESCO that's going through pages and pages from the learning cities. But again, it just shows that it's important to maintain the work that you're doing for community, for stakeholders as a learning city. And I think that to report back, as you say, Tony, you've got KPIs, and whether it's KPIs or report back, it's really important to do that. I'm just going to share the screen again because it's got some your email address.
Oh yes, okay. And we just on the Wyndham as well, that this year in September, they're having their 10th annual Learning Festival. So that's 10 years of Learning Festival. So I think that's a great measure of success. And I have a question for you, Tony, because we've got a couple of minutes left. Sustainability is a key one, and I know about government funding and the ebbs and flows of government funding. You're in cohort 1. At the end of your current funding cycle, you have to prove you're sustainable. So is there going to be more government funding after that, or that's a question we don't know yet, is it? Probably, but
Yeah, well, we don't know. I can only assume that if we keep meeting KPIs, then we'll be refunded. I mean, I think the model itself, there must be some measure of success because the government has expanded it and sort of reproduced the model from regional to suburban. I didn't actually, I might make a point on the naming of Rush too. It's previously was known as Regional University Centre, then Regional University Study Hubs. And I believe it's going to change names again to just Regional Study Hubs because it's inclusive of vocational as well as university training. So I guess I'll probably do that to the suburban university study hubs as well. But yeah, the sustainable, it's it's very difficult to be 100% sustainable, particularly at the moment. There's the economic headwinds, and in small communities, every organisation in town is putting their hands out to Greenham or McCain's or Britain Timbers for money, and they've only got so much, I guess, in their CSR budget that they can hand out. So yeah, it's always going to be somewhat reliant on the government, I guess.
Yes, and hopefully the government sees that funding, and especially in sparsely populated rural area and remote areas, is vitally important for access to education, because these are the areas that miss out often. The other thing we haven't talked about is governance. So you do have a governance model that comes from the study hub.
We do. So we have our auspice organisation, which was Heritage West Coast. And they started out originally, there was only the one study hub in Zion. And as there was that underspend, so they had budget left over, and they thought they would approach Chedick in Circular Head and expand, and which they did. And then they applied under cohort 4 to expand to King Island. Now, part of, I guess, the original idea of getting the deeds of grant was that it be place-based. So there was a couple of factors in, they had this expansion from 1 to 3, and also it wasn't so much place-based, given that you had Circular Head and King Island both being controlled by the board of West Coast Heritage, which is down in Zion on the West Coast. That's not so much place-based. So they had a business review by external consultants, and they did a business restructure, and that's when the regional manager made redundant, and then the manager put in the 3 hubs, answer to one general manager, which also is general manager of the Heritage Museum in Zion, which is part of the Heritage. So, and then under that, we then, they haven't been appointed yet. They're going through the process now of appointing 3 steering committees, so one in each location, to be more place-based and have more control of the study centre that's in there.
And they'll be strategic partners, such as the local formal education systems and business, and so it'll be a cross-sector partnership.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sort of they sort of try and steer to what the needs of the community. Yeah.
And we've got one final question from Kay. I must have prompted her when I talked about sustainability. So Kay is asking, what is the funding model? Does it cover staffing? Are there multiple funding partners?
We've yeah, that does fund staff, and I don't know. That's probably on how your application was written, I guess.
So this is federally funded, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a federal funding grant that covers the staffing. And are there multiple funding partners? Well, that's when you have to write a business case, I presume, and get other funding in.
Yeah, that's part of the DEDA grant is to seek alternative fundings, whether they're through like business partnerships or other grants. I will mention too that because we are federally funded, we never see state politicians come and visit.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah,
Maybe you'll be
but
able to get some money out of them.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm just looking at the time now. We've got about does that cover your question, Kay, just before we finish?
Yes, thank you.
Right, okay. Any further quick questions, or we've got a couple of minutes? Or I think we've questioned you out. Most people have asked a question, and we deliberately did make this a short presentation, and we've got the background paper so that people could ask these questions, and because I think that's what makes a learning forum, an informal learning forum, much more worthwhile, because people are going to have their own questions and you've answered them thoroughly. So I just want to take this opportunity of thanking you very much for that, Tony, and we're so glad that Circular Quay is going to remain a circular. Oh, why don't I want to call it Circular Head wants to remain as a member of the ALCN, or become a member of the ALCN. We're so pleased, because we'll have all 4 members of the UNESCO Global Learning City who are Australian members as members of our network. So we can all learn from them, and we can learn from the others too. And I'm so pleased that our colleagues from Hamilton and New Zealand and Hume came in as well today, as well as our guest from Tamworth, Townsville and Victoria came in to talk to us today, so and contribute. So thank you very much for your contribution today, and thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Thanks so much, Tony.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Tony. Thank you, Leonie.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.